Okay, good morning, dear students. Let's begin now. Okay, we actually learned a lot about pandas module yesterday, and today we are going to do some quiz on pandas. So just make yourselves responsible to see the recording on YouTube. I hope you watch that recordings if you miss out any class. I hope this screen is visible. So yesterday we got introduced to pandas module, and we called it as PD, and how it is used for opening CSV file. We saw what is the meaning of CSV file also. I had actually shown this CSV file opened in Excel, and it is actually comma separated value file. So anybody can make this CSV file. Just write values separated by comma on various lines, just as we saw yesterday. And PD is the module in which there is a function read CSV defined, and we can open some CSV file just by giving its name. Now remember what this read CSV does. It returns a data frame. It's known as pandas data frame. Just as when you try to try to find out the type of this data df, then you will get the type of df is a data frame. Okay, actually a data frame looks like a matrix we saw yesterday, or a table, SQL table. It's not exactly a matrix, but it has rows and columns, and we can easily deal with it. Then we saw how do you know which columns are there in your data frame. So if you just write df.columns, remember there was no bracket here because it's not a function. I said columns is an attribute of this data frame. So all these columns are there. And I also explained yesterday what do you mean by sepal length, sepal width. I took you to Wikipedia page, and I had shown these columns, correct? I also told you how to download this iris.csv from kaggle.com. Okay, then you can easily find shape of the data frame. Shape means how many rows and columns are there. So 150 rows and 6 columns are there. As an example, if suppose I give just df here, so it will show me the entire data frame, and this is how the data frame looks like. Okay, I'll better run this again. This code I have executed, the first code. The second code will show me the type, that is data frame. The third code will show me the names of the columns. The fourth code will show me the shape, which is 150 by 6, and this one will show me the entire data frame. Just check, these are the names of the columns. So how many rows were there? 150 rows, 0 to 149. You can check. These are the row indexes, and some ID column was put by the designer of this CSV file, and this ID is nothing but just the row number given. So it goes from 1 to 150. I'm not going back through the entire discussion of what these columns mean and what species mean, but clearly there are 6 columns. You can count from ID to species. There are 6 columns, correct, including ID, and there are 150 rows. So that's what the shape is saying, isn't it so? Now next thing we saw is there is a function called head, df.head, and this shows first 5 rows of the df. You know df has 150 rows, but df.head will show me the first 5 rows, and df.tail will show me last 5 rows. We saw one more function called df.sample. This df.sample, given some number here like 10, will sample out 10 rows. Any 10 rows. You can see randomly selected 10 rows are shown. We also saw how to display some columns from df. This was very important. For you know that there are 6 columns, and suppose we want to show only petal length, centimeter, and species. Only this petal length, centimeter, and species, these 2 columns. Then what is the rule I said to work with pandas data frame is that name of the data frame is df. Just check this. Name of the data frame is df. Then you are selecting something from df. So rule says that you have to put square bracket because you are selecting something. Now what do you want from this data frame? You want petal length, centimeter. So you give the name. You give the name of the column that you want, petal length, centimeter, but in quotation. Column names are always written in quotation, comma. You want species. And the column names are case sensitive. So if the designer of the CSV file have recorded these column names with capital L, capital P, capital C, capital S, you should give that. Now what is this? This is list of columns. List of columns that you want to display. But if it is list of columns, you should make it as a list. We saw all this yesterday. So first, this square bracket is given because you are selecting something from the data frame, this square bracket. And then what are you selecting? You are selecting list of columns. So it should be given as a list. That's what we did exactly in this code. If you read this code, what are we selecting? We are selecting only sepal length, sepal width, and species given as a list. So if I run this, only these three columns will be shown. Of course, this index column will be shown. This is added by default, and these are row numbers starting with 0 to 149. Okay. So what is this going to do? This is going to print only species. The list contains only one column. So only species we can see. Okay. Further, what we saw is, how do you write conditions? Like suppose we want only those rows from DF where sepal length is greater than 6.5. The sepal length column, wherever it is greater than 6.5, how do you show that? So what you first do is, you say, I want to select something from DF. So definitely there should be square bracket because you are selecting something from DF. Now what do you want to select? You want to select those rows where sepal length is greater than 6.5. But then you will have to qualify this sepal length. You will have to say sepal length centimeter. Remember, it's the column name, so I am giving it in quote. Sepal length centimeter, but this sepal length centimeter belongs to DF. So we will have to qualify this by writing DF square bracket, and sepal length goes inside the square bracket. Just check the grammar, and then you ask wherever it is greater than 6.5, whichever value of sepal length is greater than 6.5, that row should be shown, and the last square bracket marks the end of this square bracket. So if I run this, it's going to show me only those rows where sepal length check is greater than 6.5. So only few rows have been shown, isn't it? But I told you an alternate syntax for this. I hope you recall. The alternate syntax was, we can say df square bracket df dot sepal length centimeter is greater than 6.5. So instead of writing square bracket here and then in quotation sepal length, you can write that sepal length is a member of df and I want to compare it with 6.5. So even this will show the same output. I hope you are recalling. Complex conditions were also seen. Recall, two conditions were checked. Those rows where sepal length is greater than 6.5 and sepal width is greater than 3 should be shown. I think last thing we saw was how do you rename the columns. You see, the column names are very lengthy and it's very boring to always write such big column names whenever we want to write any query. So how about naming this sepal length as SL, sepal width as SW and so on, and ID as ID but with small I, and species as species but with small s. Let's say we want to rename this. So very simple method we saw. What you do is you first make a list of new column names. Now this is simply a list of strings and call that string as C and then simply say df.columns is equal to C. You recall df.columns, if I say it will give me list of all columns. You recall, if I say df.columns equal to C, then columns will be set to the new names. That can be proved by printing df.columns. Now df.columns, observe, is these new columns with of course same values under them. Oh yes, we saw how to drop a column also. We said that ID column is not interesting. It's just a number 1, 2, 3, 4. So how about dropping the column? There is a function called df.drop. From the data frame, you want to drop what? Give the name of the column ID, but the axis is equal to 1 was given to tell that in this column, the value should be deleted from all rows. Check my word. ID is a very big column containing 150 values. Then value of the ID should be removed from every row. Axis is equal to 1 is given. What was that in place equal to true? This change should be permanently registered in DF. If you don't give this in place equal to true, then the change will be temporary, or the column will be deleted but not from DF. DF will then sustain that particular column later on. In place equal to true will permanently change the DF such that now DF does not contain ID column. Okay. Also, I taught how to create new data frames from existing one. Let's say we want X, this data frame, to be equal to only 4 columns from DF and Y to be equal to only 1 column from DF. I hope you recall all this. And last thing we learned is value counts. Okay. Now I'll resume our discussion with a function called describe. Describe. Okay. Just check this function, df.describe. We want to describe the data frame. What happens when you do df.describe? This output is shown. Just check. Okay. Now we are not going to explain these rows at the moment. 25%, 50%, 75%. By the way, these are called as percentiles, not percentage. Percentiles, these are called as. Okay. But then you watch, what does that mean? 4 columns we have: SL, SW, PL, PW. Wait a minute. In DF, there was one more column. You remember? Species. Check DF. Check this DF. Check DF has species also. And these 4 columns. But then when I invoke the function df.describe, it doesn't show species column in the description. It shows only sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. Reason is that describe will only describe numeric columns. And recall, species is not a numeric column. In the species column, check it again. In the species column, we have strings like Iris setosa. Check this, Iris setosa or Iris virginica or Iris versicolor. So what are we trying to describe? We are trying to describe numeric columns, and there are 4 numeric columns, you know. What is this description, by the way, now? See, it's showing count 150. What that means is, in the entire data frame, there are 150 values of sepal length. Of course, it should be. It should be. Nothing extraordinary about that, because we have sepal length, sepal width, petal width, and species is not described here. Obviously, because it is non-numeric column. And now, under sepal length, how many values are there? Count these values. These are 150 values, because there are 150 rows. There are 150 such rows. Even sepal width, there are 150 values. So count of sepal width. Count, if you count how many values are there, 150. For each of them, the count will be 150. That's what has been described. Correct? All the counts are 150. You might wonder, what's the use of this? Of course, the number of sepal length values should be 150 because there are 150 rows. This description is very important for a person who is trying to understand, trying to analyze the data. It's very important. Just check. It can happen in real life situation. It can happen that for some flower, let's say 5th flower, this sepal length is blank. It is not recorded at all. I mean, this might be 1.5, this might be 2.8. So the person who was actually storing this data have stored values over here, but there is no value, absolutely no value stored here. It can happen, isn't it? Similarly, in some row 10, there is again no value. Maybe the botanist did not take reading of sepal length, maybe for that flower. Strange, but maybe. or maybe the person who was entering this data negligently did not enter the value. It was human error. So out of 150, two values are missing. Two values are missing. So in the count row under SL, you will see 148. In such case, immediately when you see 148, I'm sorry, immediately when you see 148, you say, good Lord, there are 150 rows. So number of SLs must be 150. It is showing 148. That means there is something phishing. There is something wrong in that particular column and some values are missing. We call these as missing values. Missing values is the biggest challenge for a machine learning engineer. Because if some sepal length is missing and all other values are available, then what are we going to do with this row? If sepal length is not there, we can't do correct prediction. Such values are many times called as NaN, not a number, not a number. These are called as NaN, not a number. Okay. So, ordinarily when you read this looks okay. There are 150 rows. That's it. 150 counts must be there. But just imagine on one fine day, you see sepal width as, let's say, 10. You will say, oh my God, 140 sepal lengths are missing. I will throw away this data. This data is bad. Okay. Next row, you just check. Mean. 5.84 triple or 4 times 3 of sepal length. What it means? Mean is a very interesting value. Okay. What mean does, what is mean is it adds all these values. Just add all the 150 values. Okay, it will come to some content. Let's say S is the sum. Then divide this with 150 because 150 are the number of values. Assuming none of the values are NaN now, all the values will be summed up and it will be divided by 150. This is known as mean. Mean is nothing but average. So what is average of SL? Is what mean says. So what do you understand from this? You say average sepal length is 5.8. Okay. Average sepal length is 5.8. So it can be bit higher than 5.8 in some rows. It can be bit lower than 5.8 in some rows. But the centric value or mean is 5.8. Similarly, sepal width is 3.05 or petal length is 3.7. But look at petal width, how informational this row is. You immediately come to know by looking at mean of petal width, you immediately come to know, oh, that means all petal widths are very small. This is about 150 flowers. You added everything and you divided it with 150. That means there are some petal widths which have value greater than 1.9. There are some petal widths which have value less than 1.9. But you think of this. If these are all the values of petal width, then the central value is 1.19. So we have this range of petal width, isn't it? That means petal width overall will have a very small value as compared to remaining columns. Okay. What's the standard deviation? This STD means standard deviation. Okay, very interesting figure called standard deviation. Listen carefully because there is some mathematics involved here. Okay, so let's work with SL. Okay, SL. Let's work with this. You know, mean of SL, this column is, what's the mean? 5.84. I will drop those 4 threes. I'll do some rounding off. Okay, mean of SL is 5.84. Correct. Now, using this mean, you can get standard deviation. But before getting standard deviation, there is one more word called variance. Okay, variance. Just check the word. Variance. Now, the variance is calculated as summation of I is equal to 1 to n. 1 to n. Okay. And then xi minus mean, the whole square, divided by n. Very simple formula. And meaning is also very easy. Okay, just see here by X, what I mean is SL, because we are talking about this column SL. Okay, and SLI means SL1, sepal length in the first row. SLI again means SL2, sepal length in the second row, sepal length in the third row, and you notice N in our case is 150. So if I expand this, this will become sepal length in 0th row minus mean first row, I'm sorry, first row, because I is 1 square. But this is summation, so plus sepal length in the second row minus mean the whole square, plus this goes on up to sepal length 150 minus mean the whole square, divided by this whole thing, whole addition is divided by 150, because N in our example is 150. This is variance. Very simple formula. Just check, and it has very interesting meaning. I'll write it here. Variance of SL column is summation of I is equal to 1 to 150, because there are 150 rows. SLI. So I is 1, so SL1, next time SL2, next time SL3, last time SL150, minus mean the whole square, the whole thing divided by 150. So assume that SL column is having these values. Okay, just assume for some time 1.6, 2.8, okay, 3.6, 2.9, these are the values, and the last value, 150th value, is let us say 5.9. Some values I am assuming. These are the values of SL. And mean, I think we found out mean was something like 5. I don't remember. Let me go. 5.8. 5.84. I think this was the mean. So what this formula becomes? Take the first SL, that is 1.6. 1.6 is subtracted with 5.84 squared, and it is added because this is summation. Check, this is summation. So take the second SL, because I is running from 1 to 150. So second SL is 2.8 minus the same mean 5.84 the whole square. Add it with the third SL, that is 3.6 minus mean 5.84 the whole square. Keep doing this till you take the last SL, that is 5.9 minus the mean 5.84 the whole square, and this will be some value. This entire value is divided with 150. This will give you variance. Hello, never ever forget this formula. This is so important, super duper important. Okay, not only for machine learning, in day-to-day life also, variance is very important. Actually, variance describes something called spread of the data. Spread of the data. It describes spread of the data. How widely spread is the data? How widely spread is the data across mean? Across mean. Oh, no. It's quite becoming something difficult. Okay, now just check what I am talking about. Okay, let me go to this page. What is minimum SL? Let me check. 4.3. And what is maximum SL? Let me check. Maximum value 7.9. 4.3, 7.9. Here we go. 4.9, 7.3. This is SL. This is the minimum value. This is what we have. This is the minimum value, and this is the maximum value in the SL column. And the mean we got was 5.84. Correct? This is the mean we got. Now just consider some SL which has value 5.75, 5.7, let's say. That is in one of the columns, the value of SL is 5.7. what is this doing? What is this difference doing? It is taking this value of SL, subtracting it from mean. Check this, subtracting it from mean and squaring it. Just imagine there is some other sepal length whose value is 6.9 in my DF. What is this formula doing? It is taking this 6.9, subtracting it from this central, that is mean, and squaring it. Suppose there is some sepal length which is, let's say, 5.1. We are again taking this, subtracting it from the mean and squaring it. So each sepal length, please try to understand, 150 sepal lengths are there here, are subtracted from the mean of sepal length and squared. What we are doing, please try to understand, we are trying to find out how far is a value of sepal length from mean. How far individual reading of the sepal length is from the mean. How far this sepal length of some flower is far from its mean. That's what we are doing, difference, isn't it? And why did we square? Come on, because this value can be negative and some values can be positive. We don't want mixture of positive negative values. We squared it, and you know, square of any number is always positive. That's why we squared it. So each flower's sepal length is actually subtracted from the mean and squared. So what we are doing is we are trying to find out how far a particular value is from mean, and then this entire sum is again averaged, divided by number of flowers. You just check. Again, it is averaged. What we finally get, I'll erase all this. What we finally get after averaging, if this is the sepal length, and 4.9 I think, and what was maximum, I forgot again, 7.9 was the maximum, and this was 5.84 if I'm not wrong, the mean. After running variance formula, we will get a value which will describe the spread of the values. That means around mean, how farly widespread are the values. What is variance? Please try to understand how widespread are the values across mean. Okay, take your own time to understand what variance is. Just imagine some arbitrary example. Let's check standard deviation before we go to the point. Once you have found variance, standard deviation is nothing but square root of variance. Square root of variance. This variance at times can be very large. Okay, it can be in thousands. So what we usually do is we take standard deviation as square root of variance. So obviously variance is square of standard deviation. Obviously, square of standard deviation. So standard deviation and variance are not two different quantities. Please try to understand. They are not different quantities. They are same, except standard deviation is a smaller version of variance because it is square root of variance. So anybody would like to work with small value instead of very large value. Variance can be very large. So you take square root of variance and you say this is standard deviation. But even this can be then called as spread. It's just the square root of variance. Okay. Now look at this. Oh, long discussion we held actually. But then let's say teacher conducts a test of 100 marks for 60 students in a class. Okay, and records marks scored by all 60 students. Of course, marks are out of 100. Okay, so these are the marks, and the teacher has recorded the marks. Let's say 65. Okay, 66, 65 again, 68, and so on. These are the marks. Okay, 66, 65, and imagine these are the marks. And then teacher will find out the mean. What is the average marks? On an average, what is the score of the entire class? Let's say it comes out as 67.5. This is the average score of the entire class. And then teacher finds variance. Okay. And this variance comes very, very small, very low variance teacher gets. What that means is that all students have performed very near to the average. If these are the range of the marks, these are the lowest marks, minimum marks scored by someone, this is maximum marks, and maximum marks, and this is the average 67.5, and the variance is very small. That means that teacher knows that all students have performed near average only. What is variance? Variance is difference of each reading with respect to mean and squaring it. Recall the formula, and then taking average of that entire sum. So it will be divided by 60 in this case. And if variance is very low, teacher is disappointed, really, because all the students performing very near to mean means there is no student who has really performed very well. And it's actually a good news that there is no student who has performed really very poor also. But what if this variance comes very high? Then teacher knows that the data is quite widespread. So there are some students who are very far from the mean. Because if this figure is very big only, then it will contribute to our sum. And then the average will increase upon 60 we are doing. So there are some students who have performed magnificently well, and there are some students who have performed really very poor. Check the spread across mean. One quantity will tell the teacher performance of the entire class. Interesting, isn't it? So you will often hear, people saying, my class has performed on an average as 67.5, and the variance is very high. If the variance is very high, you can know that there are some really very, very poor academic students, and there are very, very brilliant students in the class, because spread is large. But if the variance is very low, all are quite average. Or maybe they were sitting one behind the other and they have helped each other. That's why they have scored exactly the same marks. Spread is very low. Okay. And of course, instead of saying variance, teacher can say standard deviation also, because standard deviation is just square root of variance. So if standard deviation, same condition is applicable here. If standard deviation is very high, then the spread is very high. So there are many academically poor students. There are some strong students also. If variance is very low, all students are performing near average. So standard deviation, let's see, standard deviation of petal length, observe, is very high, 1.7. Whereas standard deviation of sepal width is lowest. So what you can understand, please check this, that if you take a minimum sepal length is 2, minimum sepal length you observe, and maximum sepal length is 4.4, and the mean, check mean, is 3.05, somewhere here, 3.05, correct? Then standard deviation is only 0.433 here and in this direction. The spread is only that much. Whereas the spread of petal length across its mean is large. So distribution of petal length is more. Various types of values, lower values and higher values are more as far as mean is concerned. Okay, so you can check every column and describe is so important here, isn't it? And that's what is the job of data analyst. When this output is seen, we should stop at this output and ask ourselves why this figure is so on, what does it mean? Okay, and we understand so many things from this. Of course, you know what is min, what is max. And I said earlier that I'm not describing this percentile right now, but very interesting again. Okay, very interesting. Okay, so that is what is described. And remember, it describes only numeric columns. Okay. Now, what if somebody says, okay, sir, you are saying describe shows all this, but what if we want to find mean of only sepal length? We don't want all this. I hope you're understanding the problem. The problem is that we want to find mean of only sepal length column. So there is a function called mean, and you can invoke it on a column of data frame. But listen, again the same thing. DF. What do you want? From this data frame, you want mean of SL. So you give square bracket, give the name of the column, SL in quote, and then dot mean. So you are finding mean of SL column which belongs to DF. Or suppose you want to find out minimum value of SL. So there is a function called min. Again, invoke it on the column SL of DF. Similarly, there is a function called max. There is a function called STD, which returns standard deviation. So any of these functions can be invoked on individual columns. So if you try this, it will be, say I write DF square bracket SL, okay, dot mean. Mean is the function. So it will show 5.83. That's it. That was the mean. That was the mean of SL, 5.83. Or you can find out maximum value of SL, and maximum value is 7.9. Okay. Let's see this row where the SL is 7.9, just for fun. DF square bracket SL is exactly equal to 7.9. So show me the row where SL of DF is having exact value 7.9. Which is that row? What values we have? See, SL is 7.9, 131st row it is, and these are other values, and it is Virginica flower, Iris virginica. Okay. Saket is asking, sir, as you interlink variance with real life example, can you also please interlink mean? Oh yes. Let's see. What we mean by mean is that in the rainy season, I mean the weather forecast departments in the rainy season, since the first day of the monsoon, in every 24 hours records the rainfall in millimeters. And let's say over the 3 months, for every 24 hours, they have recorded rainfalls in millimeters. And all these millimeters rainfalls are added and divided with 90, because there are 90 days in 3 months. And they find average rainfall this year. So what it means is, in these 3 months, on these 90 days, on an average, this much rainfall happened. Maybe some day was totally sunny, maybe in these 3 months. Some days poured down rain heavily, but we can say on an average, on every day, we have this much rainfall. That is what is the meaning of mean. On an average, what is the performance of the class? So if the average of all marks is 67.5, that doesn't mean all students have scored 67.5, but the central tendency is 67.5. Now notice many times, it is taken as a confusion about mean and the centric point. I'll tell. Just let us take an example. Suppose 5 students appear in a test. 5 students, and let's say test is of 10 marks. 10 marks. Okay, and these are the marks scored by various students: 5, 8, 10. This is a 10 out of 10. This girl scored, and then 3, and let's say the next marks is 7. These are the marks. Okay. Now you know that the mean is going to be addition of all this. So it will be, give me some time. This will be 13, 33, 36. 36 plus 7 will be 43, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. 43, correct? 13, 23, 13, 23, 33. Thank you. 33 upon 5 will be the mean. So 5 6 are 30, 0.56 are 30. 6.6 is the average. Correct? 6.6 is the mean score. That means on an average, the entire class on an average scored 6.6. But this person has not scored 6.6. Or this person has not scored 6.6. But the average performance of the class is 6.6. Okay. Now just check. There is another word called median. Often these two words are taken interchangeably, but they are not confusing at all. Now, what is median? Let's say these are the marks again. What we do is, to find out the median, we arrange all marks in ascending order, in increasing order. Okay. So these are all the marks in ascending order. And then we take median, midpoint. There are 5 values over here, 5 students. We simply take midpoint and say median is 7. So what median is, in a kind, median is also average, but not perfect average. We say that students have scored round about 7, somewhat like 7 in the entire class. So sometimes, mean is a quantity taken, sometimes median is a quantity taken by people to describe the data. As soon as you know median is 7, you know that, okay, that means half the number of students in the class have scored less than 7. Half the students have scored more than 7. That's a very interesting quantity. But 6.6, the mean, is not the central value. It's not the central value. It's like, if this was the set of all the marks, then the mean lies somewhere over here. Mean lies somewhere over here, because you are adding all these marks and dividing it with the total number of marks. Now see further, as we have started the discussion of mean and what it exactly is that this quantity mean, is sometimes very, very fatal, dangerous for, at least for data analysis. It's very dangerous. Just say that 5 students appeared in the test, which is of 10 marks, and while inputting the data 5, 8, 10, 3, and this data was mistakenly entered as 70. That was a mistake in fact. But let's say instead of this 70, to keep our discussion continuous or consistent, let's say this value was 80. Let's say, okay, that was a mistake. But then what we will do is that, assuming these are the marks, we will find mean. And now you see, mean is going to increase like anything, isn't it? So what is it going to be? Can you help me? This is 85, then 95 plus 10, the numerator will be 105. 105 upon 5 will be 21. Oh, really? That means on an average, students have scored 21 in my class. One poor value called outlier. Don't worry, we are having a separate lecture on outliers. Outliers are some poor values entered. Mean can magnificently increase, isn't it? And will really give us a wrong information. One poor value, but median won't. Just check, how will you find median of these marks? You arrange them in increasing order. So 3, 5, 7. After that, you have 10, correct? 10, and last value is 80. Last value is 80. See? And now still the central tendency is 7. So half the students have scored less than 7. Half the students have scored more than 7. But at least you know that what is the performance as a whole of the class. So that's where mean and standard, mean and median come into picture. So you would say median is less susceptible to outliers. But as soon as you get outliers, mean are really shocking. Okay. Where were we? We were describing all this, big discussion we had now on this describe. Okay. There is something called there is something called info also, info function. Let's see. Info. My God, what is all this? I am again asking for information of the data frame. And nice thing is now species is also shown, you see, although it is non-numeric. This clearly tells everything about column. Now you see SL is the name of the column. And then it says how many non-null values are there. Recall, if some value is missing, Hannah, if some value is missing, then you will get less than 150 here. It says that there are 150 rows and there are exactly 150 values in the SL column. So none of them is a nan. None of the values is a nan. Non-null values are 150. Good. That means we don't have any missing value of SL. It is saying 150 non-null. 150 non-null. So non-null count is basically the name of the column here. How many values are non-null? 150 values are non-null. That's very, very good news for us. And what is the data type? Float. 64 bit. So each SL, each value of SL is going to eat up 64 bits, sorry, not bytes, 64 bits of the data of the memory. Okay, each of them, you see, each of them is a float. Each of them is a float, whereas species is object. Actually, it is object of str, string. That's not shown, but it is definitely an object. So what are the various data types? Float 64, four columns are of the type float 64 and one column is of type object. Memory usage 6.0 plus KB. So those 150 rows and all those columns, if you store it in internal memory, it is going to take 6 KB, but bit more than that. Plus has been shown. Bit more. Very good information. Isn't it? Very nice information. Okay, there is one function called isNull. Let's see what it does. IsNull. I think so. yesterday actually it happened that I forgot one of the functions and I had to go to Google to search it. Please don't find it very funny if it every now and then happens with your teacher. Okay, well, I know the meaning of this. That's more important. And it's okay if you forget the grammar of the function. You can't remember everything, but you should know that okay, there is some way of finding non-null. How many non-null values are there? You can go to Google and always take the help. Okay, so df.isNull, what it is saying is that false over here means SL in this particular row. SL in this particular row is not null. You can see everything is false. That means all values are not null. All values are meaningful values. Everywhere it is false, you see. Although this output is not very, very readable. Isn't it? It's not so much readable. Correct? So can we do something like this? Dot sum, I will say. Dot sum. Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing now? Now this looks quite good. First of all, df.isNull. Take a break. Just be careful. Relax. df.isNull. What it does? Go to the empty page. See, this is our data frame, and it contains sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and species. And under sepal length, we have values like 4.8, 4.9, 3.8, 6.2, some values, correct? And 150 such values are there. 150, because 150 rows are there. Same goes with sepal width and petal length, petal width, and species. Now have a look at this function, df.isNull. Have a look at this function. What it does, it is actually an iterative job. df.isNull, will go to sepal length column. Wait. It will first go to sepal length column and then check. Ask this: are you null? No. So the output for this is false. Are you null? No. So again false. Are you null? No. So false, 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 false. You saw all false, isn't it, over there? You saw all false. So how many falls are there here? How many falls? 150 falls? Correct? If you just ask to sum all that, please give me how many such values are false. It will give 150. So we clearly know, okay, in sepal length column, 150 values are not null, Same way happens to sepal width. Because this is null will check sepal width also. This is null function will check petal length also, and petal width also, and species also. And for each one of them, it will find out the sum. So you just check. What it is saying is 0 here. Why? Because we are asking who is null. Just check who is null. Nobody is null. All are false. So what is the count of null? Count of null is 0. Imagine. Oh, I think I told opposite. Imagine some value is missing. This is nan. So out of 150, one value is missing. So this is null will return true for this nan, but false for all. For all others, it will return false. Correct? For all others, it will return false, but only for one row SL, it will return true. And then we are summing up how many true values are there, how many are null, is null we are saying. So for SL, we will get 1. You will immediately come to know that in SL column, there is one null value. Just have a look at this. Very, very quickly you can find out. And good news is none of the values are null. All are 0. That's another way of checking for null values. So many ways are there, isn't it, to check for nulls? So many ways. First way is df dot describe. I'm running the command again. Please excuse me. First way, see the count. Array, you will say 150 rows are there, 150 SLs are there. Finished. That means none of the values are null. Okay. Second way is df dot info. This so clearly tells 150 non-null values are there for SL. So none of the values are null. Third method is you say df dot is something null, like that you're asking in each column, and for each column give me the sum of how many null values are there. Everywhere 0 is printed. That means none of the values are null in any of the columns. So many ways are there. Fantastic. Now let's take up a new exercise just for fun. Now you see there is one CSV file here, water potability.csv. Okay, this is about what? Purity of drinking water. And a number of water samples were taken from various places, and various readings were taken, like how much chlorine content it has, what is pH value, and all that. And then it was decided whether this sample of water can be used for drinking or not. So if 0, then cannot be used for drinking. If 1, then can be used for drinking. So very, very good water potability file they have made, and you can get it from Google. You can just say download water potability dataset, and it will take you to the page and where you can download this file. Okay, so I have already downloaded this water potability.csv. And remember, yesterday I said that many times we don't know anything about the data, and suddenly this data is given to us, and we have to understand this in Python. So what I will do is I will create a new notebook. This is sheer repetition that we are doing, but a very healthy repetition, which will help us in getting greater insight of what we are learning. First of all, we want to deal with CSV file. So we will import pandas as PD, just a short name given, and then we will create a data frame. df is equal to pd dot read CSV, read _ CSV, and we will give the name of the file was water underscore potability dot CSV. Okay, and let's run this, whether it is executing. It is still executing. Oh, it is open. The file is open. Let's try to print df. Oh, good lord, look at this. Now any person who is a programmer would be shocked to see this data. Okay, and you can see some data is missing straight away. Missing here, sulfate content is missing. Okay, and the columns are so many that even some columns are not visible, so we can use the scroll bars. Last column here is potability. 0 means this water, this sample taken cannot be used for drinking. 1 means this sample can be used for drinking, isn't it? How many rows, by the way, we have? Oh, good lord, we have 3,276 rows and 10 columns. And these are all the readings taken for any water sample. Tell me, do you know what is organic carbon? At least I don't know. What is this? Trihallomethanes. I am not even able to pronounce this. Turbidity. What is this? Well, you will have to be an environmentalist to know this. But we aren't. But we are given this data set. And the problem, recall the problem I described yesterday, classification problem. If so much of data is given and you are told in which situation data is useful, that is, water is useful, water is not useful for drinking. If this data is given, then we can build a classification problem. Given any new data, any new sample, our program will tell whether it is potable or not. I hope you remember that. Long discussion we had on this. But before we do anything like that, before we write Python program, it is important to understand the data, isn't it? So you will have to sit, you will have to talk for several days, maybe several hours, if not several days. What is the meaning of each of these columns? I know you won't understand a lot, including me, but at least we can go nearer to understand what that column means and what role it plays in deciding whether water is potable or not. Like if it is 86, just check this value is 86, water is not potable. But if it is 66, it is potable, isn't it? But then what this column is and what does it contribute, we don't know. So we'll have to sit with domain expert and understand what exactly these columns mean. This is first thing we will have to do. Yeah, first thing. And the domain expert may always ignore us, or may say how ignorant we are, and we have to listen to all that and interestingly take out whatever we can from that domain expert. Okay. Now recall. How do you know which columns are there? You just say df.columns. Just a revision. Yeah, these are the columns. Check. It has returned list of columns. Yes, last column being potability, first column being pH. You might have also observed in this data frame that ID column is not there. Recall in the previous exercise we dropped ID. In this all columns are useful, all columns. So we are not going to drop anything. Okay, so df.columns will show me list of columns, and you just check df.shape. df.shape is going to show me how many rows and columns are there. Exactly 3276 rows and 10 columns were there. Okay. Now, what if you want to print only solids and potability? Only solids and potability. So what you would do, you would say df, I want to select something, so square bracket, again a list, and you will give list of columns. S is in capital. Remember, the column names are case sensitive. So solids, comma, the other person in the list is potability. These are itself given as a list of columns inside the square bracket of df. So if I run this, oh, I made some mistake here. Here for this column, I should have given quote begin and quote close. Column names must be always in quotation. So you can see instead of 10 columns, you are seeing only 2 columns. Okay. Okay. What if I want to see only those rows where maybe organic carbon, this column is having a value maybe greater than 18. Organic carbon should be greater than 18. So what should I do is df, I want to select something, so square bracket, and then I will have to qualify that organic carbon by giving df square bracket in quotation organic underscore carbon, correct, is greater than 18. So only those rows will be shown where this condition is met. You can see all these rows have organic carbon greater than 18. The other way, recall, was of doing this was say df dot organic carbon, the name of the column. Then you won't need the square bracket, you won't need the quotation. This will also give the same output. We will not rename the columns here, okay? All columns are very nicely named, but if you want to rename any columns, you can by making list of columns and assigning that columns to df dot columns. You recall that. Okay, let's try to invoke a function df dot describe. df dot describe. Okay, let's describe the entire data frame. Okay, now you know that there are 3276 rows, but under ph you see the count, it's 2785. So but if there are so many rows, then there should be 3276 values of ph. That means this column ph has many values, null values. But observe hardness, good. All these this entire column hardness have all meaningful values because it is exactly equal to number of rows. Even for solids, this column is too bad. I mean, oh good lord, check this sulfate. Many values are missing. Conductivity, everything is there in shape. Organic carbon, everything there. This column has some missing values, isn't it? Some missing values. And potability, everything is there. Turbidity is also there. Okay. So we know that there are some missing values. You can see average of each of the column here. Standard deviation of each of the column. And minimum value of pH is 0. Okay. So where was I? Info. I think you saw this. df.info. You saw this describe? I hope so. Okay. So df.info, you see, is saying that pH is one of the columns. Okay. And only these many values are non-null. But if there are 3276 entries and only these are non-null, then there are some values which are null. And all values are a float type. That is real numbers. For every column, it will show that how many non-null values are there. So wherever you see less than number of rows, 3276, then you can say that that column has some null values. You can also see the last column, potability, is of type int. Obviously, because potability has either 0 or 1, so it is int type. But all other columns are a float type. And the memory required is around 256 KB. 256 KB is not a small amount. It's a large file. Please try to understand. Let's try to give df dot is null. Okay, df dot is null. What it does, it runs through the entire df, and for every value it checks, are you null? Oh yes, this person says I am null, so true. Are you null? This person says I am not null, so false, and so on. And if I just say dot sum, it will count how many true values are there under pH. So how many null values are there under pH? How many null values are there under hardness, and so on. So if I run this, just check. If I run this, there are 491 null values under pH. And this is quite serious. This is very serious. 781 values missing. in sulfate column. But all other rows are quite good. 162 values are missing under this column. Just check this. This is the data frame we are having. Many null values. Okay. Now, one more problem I taught yesterday that we will revise thoroughly now. What was the problem I taught, is that in any machine learning algorithm, which we are going to later on implement, in any machine learning algorithm, what you do is that if some data frame is given and some columns are there, let's say C1, C2, C3, C4, these are the columns. Okay. And last column is the output column. I said last time, like in our case, it is potability right now, which is 0 or 1. Or in the case of Iris, it was species, isn't it? This is generally known as output column. Now, for any machine learning algorithm, what you have to do is, given a data frame, you have to break this data frame such that create one separate data frame which will contain only these input values. Because they decide the output, isn't it? Depending on these readings, the output is decided. So this you separate out. And this create a new data frame which will contain only one column, output column. This data frame which contains only input columns is often called as capital X. There is no such rule. There is no such rule, but all authors, all programmers use capital X. So this X will contain these columns, and we will cut the data frame in such a way that small y is the data frame which will contain only output column. This is the most important step in most of the machine learning algorithms. So how did we do that last time? Just check. I'll again show you the data frame. This is the data frame we are having. Oh, I went to wrong page. Sorry. We were working on water potability. So data frame. This is our data frame, and we want only these first columns, first 9 columns up to turbidity in our new data frame. I hope you are understanding. So what's the way out? Simple. You say capital X. This capital X is equal to df square bracket, again square bracket, and give list of columns. So only those columns will be picked from data frame and new data frame X will be created. So it's very hard to type these column names over here. But you recall we had listed all the columns here. So I'll just copy paste from here. And I will just leave out the potability column. These are the list of columns. I'll just copy. And I'll paste it here. So this is the list of columns we are giving, paste. Done. Let's try to print X. You can see X now does not contain potability column. Just check the last column is not there. And how do you create Y? The one more data frame you create, small y is equal to df square bracket, and then give the name potability in this particular list of columns. So now if you print small y, it's going to print only potability. This way we have separated out, and now we will work with X and Y together to do predictions or to write our Python machine learning model. So you know what? When we go further in our machine learning model design, you will see words like xtrain, then xtest, something like that, xtest. All these have come from this X, from this data frame. Okay. What we are going to do, this data frame X, where were we? This data frame X, which contains all this, we are again going to break it. We got this X by breaking df, correct? Df was broken. But we will again break this X such that some of the rows of this data frame will be in xtrain, and some other rows will be in xtest. So we'll again create two different data frames. Please try to understand. So you will often see such words with capital X, X train, X test, then Y train, Y train, Y test. What we are going to do with Y also is the same. We are going to break this Y in such a way that some of the rows will be there in Y train, new data frame, and another data frame here, which will contain Y test. Okay, but not now, obviously, but this is the most important thing that any programmer would first do with the data frame given. I hope you have got everything that I explained till now. So here is my question. Let's not work with X and Y. This was only an exercise I took. We will work with a data frame. But this was important because when we build machine learning models, we will break the data frame into X and Y, but not now. Now it is not useful to us. So I'll just delete that code and I'll delete this code also. But remember what I explained is very important. Okay. So this is our data frame. Entire data frame intact with portability also. Okay. Now here is my question. You see, in some rows potability is 0. That means this water is not useful for drinking. In some rows potability is 1. Okay. Now what I am curious to know is that if there are so many rows, how many rows are there? 3276 rows. Then how many rows are containing potability equal to 1? And how many rows are containing potability equal to 0? I want to know that. I hope you understood the question. So out of 3276 rows, if I get only 10 rows have potability equal to 1, it's very sad, and really we should do something about our earth, our home, ultimate home. And out of 3276 rows, if suppose 3000 rows are having potability equal to 1, that's good news for us. Earth is still a safe place. How do you find out that? What you do is you say DF, and which row are you inquiring about? Potability? Potability? Oh, I'm so sorry. And then dot, you invoke a function called value counts. Recall, here is where I messed around yesterday. Recall, I went to Google and I found out that the answer is value counts, isn't it? Anyway, never mind. I said there's nothing wrong in if you forget a particular function, you can always find it. Okay, let's run this. Oh, it says that 1998 rows have non-drinkable water. So those samples are very dangerous, whereas only 1278 rows have potable water. These 0 and 1 are the values of potability, isn't it? But sad, you are not able to see the name of the column here, isn't it? That potability is 0, potability is 1. That's because we did not give one more square bracket here. One more square bracket. List of columns. One more square bracket. Let me try this, and this looks good. So from DF, you are selecting list of columns. When you give list, then the heading will be shown properly. And then if potability is 0, so many rows are there. If potability is 1, so many rows are there. Then nothing bad in not giving the square bracket. If you don't give the square bracket, then the heading will not be shown properly. And then you will wonder, what is this 0? What is this 1? Okay. So it's always better to give list of columns in this fashion. And you can easily find out how many values are 0, how many are 1s. Okay. In our case, it's really rubbish to check hardness value count, because it is a real number. Come on. When do you count something? When it is countable. When it is countable, isn't it? So 0 or 1. See, potability contains only 0 or 1. Okay. Those values are countable. At how many places you have 0, at how many places you have 1. But what are you going to count here? How many places are 204.89, or how many places are 129.42? What are you going to achieve by that? This is a real number, float value. So value counts will be always used with countable values, isn't it? I hope you are understanding. So just as in the DF, in our iris example, if I give DF square bracket and species, okay, dot value counts, value underscore counts. Okay, so it will tell me that in species column, iris setosa, this word iris setosa in that column occurs 50 times. Iris versicolor 50 times, virginica 50 times. That means in 150 rows, 3 types of flowers are there, and all 3 types of flowers are magnificently evenly distributed. Exactly 50 setosa, 50 versicolor, 50 virginica flowers we have. But it is meaningless to check it with sepal length. Sepal length is a float value. What value count you will get there? I hope you are understanding. This was a very important information. You must accept this. Instantly we will know how many rows are dangerous and how many are useful to us. Okay. So I hope today's discussion was again very helpful for all of you, and it led us to a very solid understanding of pandas module. How do you roam around the data? And I suddenly today shown some accidental data, and we tried to understand it as much as possible. Okay, so continue. Let's continue. Look, I'll show this data frame again. Just check this. Many rows, have null values. You already know that. Many rows have null values. Okay. Now these null values are going to contribute nothing. They are not going to contribute anything for our learning, machine learning. For machine learning algorithms, you should have some value over here along with all other values in that row. So what we have to do as a machine learning engineer is that we have to deal with these null values. Okay, the person who has entered the data has done miserable mistake, but we cannot continue writing a program with null values there in our data. We should first deal with these null values. Okay, then you may say, what shall we do with these values? One solution might be, you say, sir, you replace all these NaNs with 0. Wherever NaN is, you replace them with 0 everywhere. But that will be misleading, isn't it? That will be really misleading. That will be bad, it seems, because you see sulfate is in hundreds. Each entry of sulfate is in hundreds. Suddenly, how can you have some water with sulfate 0? It might be water sample from Mars, might be. How can you do that? Blindly replace everything with 0. Although this can be a solution, but not an acceptable one. Then what can we do with these NaNs? One super solution or a narrow escape, I say, is simply delete these rows. Entire row you delete wherever NaN is there. So this row has one NaN value in some column. Simply drop this. See this also. This row also, complete row you drop. So one poor value has spoiled the entire row, you can say. Even this row is dropped. But you see, this row will be retained. This row is good. All values are non-null. So we'll keep this. Okay. How do you drop it? You just say df dot drop na. Oh, wow. What a function. Drop na. So all those rows, wherever NaN is there, will be dropped. Okay. So I'll run this. Check that directly third row is shown. So first and second row are dropped. Correct? And after 5, 6, 7, although all the rows are not shown, but you can see, if you remember, that we had 3270 rows, if I'm not wrong, but now only 2011 rows are pending. So many rows were deleted. I hope you recall some 3270 rows were there. But now wherever null values were present, those rows were dropped, simply dropped. So in short, we have removed all the rows which had null values anywhere. Okay. Now let's see something shocking. I will try to print df again. Oh my god, it shows that null values again. Just see, it shows the null values again. I just now dropped them, and when I'm printing df, it is again showing me the null values. I want answer from your side. Something was missing here. Something was missing. You tell me what it is. Waiting for next 10 seconds. You can write it in chat maybe, or you can switch on your microphone and answer. What is something wrong here? And that is why the change was temporary. So next time when I printed df, it has shown me all the rows as if nothing had happened. So this change was not permanent, it was temporary. What was missing here? In place equal to true. Otherwise the change won't be permanent. So drop the rows where nan are there and make that change permanent. Change should be in df. If you don't give this, then the change will be temporary. So if I now run this, obviously, wait a minute. If I now run this, obviously the nans are dropped, and now if I print df, this change is permanent. You watch. Anytime you ask for df now, you won't get those rows which you deleted. In place equal to true. I hope you understood how to drop the nulls from your data frame. But the thing is that in Iris dataset, we had no nulls at all. The entire dataset was so good, all 150 rows were totally filled with meaningful values. Okay. So next week when we join, I will tell you about 2 more modules next Saturday, Sunday, NumPy, that is numeric processing, and matplotlib. And then we will not forget pandas. Every time, when we learn matplotlib, we say, okay, we can plot graph. But what do you plot on the graph? Data. We plot data. From where are we going to get the data? From pandas. From the data frame, we will get the data and we'll put it on the graph. So we'll try to mix these modules and try to understand how we can analyze data using graphs also. Graphs is a visual way of geometrically watching how the data looks like. Bye everyone. I will stop share and end this meeting.